Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Hischier. I teach here at the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, and I teach in two different areas. One is in entrepreneurship and the other is in strategy. So as part of that, I'm often working with startups that students are trying to generate while they're here in business school. I also work with academics and research scientists around our campus, as well as nationally through an organization that's government run called the National Science Foundation to help commercialize technical research. And the third area I work in that kind of touches into entrepreneurship is around innovation and large companies that come to Berkeley because they're looking for ideas, inspiration, and potentially startups to partner with in terms of bringing more innovation products and services. Berkeley's a big campus. We have 60,000 people here. Half of those are students. Within Berkeley, we like to say it's sort of let 1,000 flowers bloom. We have multiple accelerators for startups that are open to all students. So not just from the business school or school of engineering, but across schools. And that's actually the most interesting place. We often need a computer scientist to work with an engineer, to work with a business student in terms of thinking about a startup to launch. So the accelerators provide them with space, they provide them with coaching services, they'll provide them with networking and pitching events to investors as well as to alumni who might be like angel investors. That is the accelerator component of campus. Taking a step back, we also increasingly teach basic entrepreneurship courses as well as this lean launch method in multiple places on campus. And what the lean launch method is, and you may be familiar with, is basically going out and doing a number of interviews with potential customers to figure out what their problems are and then working back into how can I create a product or service that solves that problem. So we train students on that, and then we often help them as they work through an idea, a prototype, and an eventual launch. Berkeley is obviously a university. We then have multiple constituencies inside the university, but we are part of this larger ecosystem that constitutes Silicon Valley. So what does that mean? Geographically, if you looked at UC Berkeley, it's sort of a square inside the city. Around it, there are actually multiple investment firms that are constantly looking to get into early stage startups, even working with research scientists and academics to figure out where can they help commercialize something that has massive potential. The university itself also has a unit for that called the Tech Transfer Office that traditionally has helped to support spinoffs from the university. And then at a leadership level, in the last few years, the campus has actually created a chief innovation officer position. This is led by Rich Lyons, who used to be the dean at the business school here. And his entire job is to help with these different events on campus that can help commercialize what's happening here and connect Berkeley with funding, with large corporations looking for innovation, and with sources of government funding. Some of the accelerator programs do provide small amounts of funding, but for the most part, no. Often that funding comes in the form of like an award that somebody wins, like a pitch competition, and with that they get an award. But the campus itself normally is not an investor. And part of that is because we are a public university. So we're essentially the government. The campus doesn't have a lot of extra funding, but also it really just serves as the infrastructure, not the financial component. Well, in the ideal world, there would be like a single point of contact that would take, say Cisco wants to work with Berkeley, that single point of contact would say, wonderful, what would you like to do? Do you want to hire students? Do you want to fund research? Do you want to actually help us to co-develop a course? It's not that organized, I'll be frank. But what often happens is that these large corporations have a dedicated person, or in some of the larger companies like Chevron, they have a whole functional team, and their job is university relations. And that university relations person will be dedicated to managing, say, the Berkeley relationship. And that person will come to Berkeley and kind of oversee all things that Chevron does with Berkeley, whether it's investing in the chemical engineering department, whether it's recruiting PhD or even undergraduate students, or if it's coming on campus to help sponsor things like pitch competitions or conferences in a particular space. So corporates reach out through a lot of different mechanisms to the university, and as you can hear, it's a little bit disjointed. It's not always as cohesive as it should be, and that's something that, like, the chief innovation officer role is trying to make a little bit more organized and holistic. But there are a lot of different avenues and ways of working with the university for corporates. For entrepreneurship, it's almost entirely practitioners, or what we call lecturers. So people who do this on a part-time basis, who have often jobs outside of the university, who've run startups. It's very rare and frankly discouraged for a pure academic to teach entrepreneurship, mainly because most of them have never actually started a company, worked in a company, run a company. And so we're able to do that inside the business school because we do teach a lot of our classes through lecturers or through practitioners, not pure academics. That's different for other departments on campus, but one of the beauties of the business school. And the reason being that much of what is needed for that teaching is not based on publication or research, but pure experience and network. So you mentioned about the networks, that Berkeley has. Each person that teaches has a network they bring. And one of the biggest values we often bring to our students is we can help make introductions for them to say, oh, you want to launch a startup in the ventilation for hospital space. Let me introduce you to a friend or a colleague or an alum that works at this hospital in operations. So we extend our networks to the students, and that's, kind of then a warm intro. And that's not something that you would normally find from an academic whose entire career and often network is in a much more kind of academic space.
Okay.
Well, this is always the classic kind of hot button issue inside universities, especially places like Berkeley, in terms of, there's a philosophy that you don't want corporates determining the research that's done in an academic setting. But the reality is that, if a corporate is funding a research project, they're going to have a strong say in what they want it to focus on. And there is that component on campus. But much of what I've worked with, especially through like the National Science Foundation kind of lean launch, or what we call ICOR program, is pure academic research just for academic sake. But in technical fields, like coming from material science, coming from biotechnology, where you have academics, this is their field of research, but they have an inkling and they have a desire to turn this into a business. And many times they've actually never talked to a potential customer stakeholder. So they've been in a laboratory, but they haven't gone out to say, am I thinking about solving the right problem? Is it a problem that people will pay to solve? And am I sure that I have the best solution, or that it hasn't already been solved? So that's sort of what we encourage them to do. I would say, though, the motivation to participate in that is very much individual and lifestyle based. Not everybody wants to start a startup, and not everybody that does scientific research wants to go into the academic field. So we kind of pull in that sub segment. So in some cases, if the IP is fully developed on campus, the technology transfer office develops some type of licensing royalty payment that goes back to the university. But what I've seen is increasingly a more relaxed approach to that. So the university is not necessarily mandating that funds come back. I know this is an issue. I did some work in this space and teaching these courses in Romania a few years ago. And the reaction from the academics there was, "This is great," but you realize that like we don't have a legal framework to support this. So essentially, if we tried to commercialize our research, we'd be seen as stealing university IP, a sort of jailable offense. So you do have to ensure that the legal frameworks exist around IP protection, and the understanding from the university is supportive and clear, for people to feel comfortable going forth and trying to spin out.
Do they?
Yeah, it changes. It's interesting. You would think that, like when I finished business school, sort of same thing. I went to business school in 1999, where everyone had a startup, and then I graduated in 2001 when the world fell apart with an economic crash along with 9/11. And so at that time, it was pretty difficult to encourage anyone to do a startup because people didn't feel like there was risk taking in kind of the funding space, and most people just wanted the security of a paycheck and healthcare. I think what's shifted in terms of it going from curiosity to career, one is, it always takes that one unicorn or even semi-successful unicorn that comes from the network of the university for people to go, I could do that too. I think also people are realizing that the skill set you develop through entrepreneurship is probably more valuable than what you pay for the MBA, but also there's transferable skills. So if you create a startup, everything you do to launch that will make you invaluable. If you decide this isn't what I want to do, but I'm going to go into consulting or running product or running business development inside a company. And I think that social perception is changing around the world too. I'm curious if it's becoming more valuable in Hungary as well, to say, look, it's okay if you failed with a startup, because what you've done and the grit that you've shown and the skills you've developed make you an even more valuable potential hire. It's interesting too, Marcus, you and I met when I was back in Hungary doing some work around case study around entrepreneurship in
Yes.
Hungary and in Poland. And one of the things that I've noticed there, as well as successful startups that have spun out from other parts of the world, the one defining factor for those entrepreneurs that made them successful was having spent time outside their own country, oftentimes like in the UK or in the US or Canada, and where they developed a comfort with the language, with developing a network outside of their own country, and then just understanding kind of like at the very cursory level, like culturally, how does business work? That just seemed to be the single defining thing, because it opens up your eyes to there's a bigger world than just a national or even European market, but also like you've got connections that you can call, and then they have people you can call, and it sort of becomes this nice organic viral growth of a network. It was so impressive, the entrepreneurs that I met when I was visiting Hungary and in Budapest, like the level of sophistication, technically, the language skills, right? Because for better or for worse, not many people globally speak Hungarian, so you do need to learn other languages, which is something that's invaluable. The not just innovation, but I would say savviness in terms of figuring out, I think this is a problem we have here. Is this a problem that's larger that we could solve?